guess many of you have heard about ESG. But why is ESG important for companies? Let's jump into it. There are several benefits for firms that engage with ESG. The first is reputation enhancement. Today, consumers take a deep interest in the sustainability of products, including environmental and labor issues. There is a strong demand for sustainable products to purchase and sustainable companies to invest in. Thus, a reputation for good ESG practices helps a firm increase its customer base and attract investors. Second, sustainability policies can increase employee productivity. Research suggests that employees from the Generation Z age group prefer to work for companies that share their beliefs and values. Adopting sustainability policies helps companies to recruit talent. In addition, an employee-friendly approach can boost workplace morale. In sum, such measures can help improve employee motivation and productivity, contributing to the bottom line. Moreover, sustainability policies help companies manage and lower their ESG risks. For example, they reduce the risk of environmental breaches, sexual discrimination in the workplace, and corruption in management. This ties in with the growing appreciation of social values, such as diversity and inclusion, environmental issues, and the impact on the community. If companies ignore the negative externalities of their business, this can lead to ESG scandals that could have disastrous outcomes. Thus, although ESG policy can be costly compared with unmanaged ESG exposure, their adoption pays for itself. The Me Too movement provides an example of the increasing awareness of ESG. Before the movement, firms' management paid little attention to gender issues and sexual harassment. However, since the movement, concerns about these issues have had a higher profile among society and employees. Many companies have started to take these issues seriously and regard them as an important corporate governance priority. For example, in the United Kingdom, 7 partners of KPMG and 20 partners of Deloitte were pressured to resign due to inappropriate behavior, such as sexual harassment and bullying. This event has negatively impacted the reputation of these two companies. To assess ESG more objectively, institutions have created several ESG ratings for reference. The best-known ESG ratings include MSCI, S&P Global Ratings, and FTSE Russell. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index Company has appointed the Hong Kong Quality Assurance Agency to evaluate the ESG performance of Hong Kong-listed companies and A-shares companies based on sustainability. You may now be wondering, how do they compute the ESG rating for a company? Let's take MSCI as an example to explore how rating agencies quantify ESG performance. MSCI is the first ESG rating agency to measure and embed companies' ESG risk exposure. It assesses a company's ESG performance by comparing the company with its industry peers. This relative assessment approach is various because different industries have different ESG risks. For example, water is vital for mining companies but probably not an issue for software companies, which instead need to manage the risk of data security. Then, MSCI evaluates companies' exposure and management to the risks. This process requires a large amount of quantitative and qualitative data. After the evaluation, MSCI assigns weights to each type of ESG risk. Finally, the ESG score is computed and normalized to yield a company's ESG rating. MSCI categorizes ESG ratings into 3 categories: AAA and AA ratings for leaders in the industry, A, BBB and BB for average companies, and B, CCC for laggards. You may wonder how firms compare their own ESG reports. Here is a flowchart suggested by the Hong Kong Stock Exchange for preparing an ESG report. The first step is to form an ESG working group to study the ESG requirements, company exposure to ESG risks, and ESG strategic plan. The second is to conduct materiality assessments, in which firms identify ESG-related information for disclosure. The third is to set ESG targets that meet SMART criteria: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. The fourth is writing up the ESG report. The report is divided into sections, such as an ESG governance statement, an explanation of the scope of the report, application of specific reporting principles, and reporting of achievements in different ESG aspects. The company should provide a detailed explanation of the materiality assessment. So what is the materiality assessment? The materiality assessment is conducted to decide which ESG risks are crucial to disclose to stakeholders. The materiality table shown on the slide is an example provided by Hong Kong EX. This table shows the possible ESG risks faced by different industries. We can see that although companies may face sector-specific ESG risk exposure, some ESG areas are essential for all companies, like climate change, employment, labor standards, and anti-corruption. To understand more about what companies have done in the ESG field, we can study some examples of role models. Microsoft, which is a software and services industry leader, has an AAA grade in the MSCI ESG rating. Let's look at the MSCI ESG rating website, which shows each company's performance in different key ESG dimensions. From the table, we can see that Microsoft outperforms its peers in many aspects, such as corporate governance, human capital development, privacy, data security, and opportunities in clean technology. If you want to know more about a company's work in ESG, the Corporate Social Responsibility Report issued by the company will have useful insights. For example, according to the latest CSR report, Microsoft provides broadband access to 2.1 million people in unserved areas in the USA. In addition, the company has donated or discounted products worth a total of $1.9 million to 243,000 nonprofit organizations. In terms of privacy and security, the company dealt with 24 malware disruptions and thus protected over 500 million devices from cybercriminals. Another role model that I want to share with you is Texas Instruments, which achieved an AAA MSCI ESG rating. It performs exceptionally well in water stress targets, including water reuse, tool optimization, water purification, and water recirculation in its supply chain. We can find more about what Texas Instruments has done for its corporate citizens report. The company reused and recycled around 90% of its waste or surplus materials in production in 2020. In addition, it reduced water usage by 4.4% from 2019 to 2020, resulting from its efforts in water purification and recirculation. It donated around $50 million to those in need, a part of which was used for COVID-19 relief efforts. As we mentioned earlier, companies assess and manage the risks relevant to their industry. Texas Instruments manufactures semiconductors, so water is vital for its operation. Thus, water stress is a critical ESG risk for Texas Instruments, so the company has made great efforts to save water to ensure long-term sustainability. This shows that cost reductions is an extra motivation for a company to manage its ESG risk. Having discussed some examples of multinational enterprises, let's talk about how local companies contribute to ESG. The first example is the New World Development Company, which is ranked in the top 15% ESG performer in the real estate industry globally. The company won the Best ESG Award in the 2021 Hong Kong ESG Reporting Awards for its ongoing efforts to improve its ESG. Its MSCI ESG rating was upgraded from BB to BBB in 2021. The company is now included on the MSCI Hong Kong listed southbound country ESG leaders index. To learn more about how New World Development Company gets the grips with ESG, we can look at its sustainability report. In 2021, the company reduced its carbon emission by 33%. Moreover, the reduction in waste to landfill intensity and water usage exceeded the original targets for 2030 by 59% and 30% respectively. In addition, the company has shown its commitment to community values. In 2021, it provided each employee with an average of 19.6 hours of sustainability training, adding up to a total of 13,749 hours. This is an impressive devotion to promoting sustainability. ESG is not only for large companies. Small and medium-sized companies can also benefit from managing their ESG risk. Let's take Pacific Basin, a maritime transport company, as an example. Among mid-capital companies, the company received the Best ESG Report Award at the Hong Kong ESG Reporting Awards. According to its ESG report in 2021, Pacific Basin received an A+ ESG rating from the HKQAA. The company committed to using only zero-emission ships by 2050 and invested heavily in the development and the training of its staff. It also demonstrated its devotion to contributing to the community by providing $365,000 to the seafarer community. Non-governmental organizations also make significant strides to improve ESG. The Chinese YMCA of Hong Kong is providing services to groups in need, such as children, teenagers, and the elderly. It won the Grand Award for Excellence in Social Positive Impact at the 2021 Hong Kong ESG Reporting Awards. Its latest ESG report shows that the organization invested 1.5 million Hong Kong dollars and 21,997 hours in staff training. In addition, the YMCA launched a renovation project to convert its existing headquarters to a green building, which is projected to save over 2 million kilowatt-hours of energy annually. In terms of education, the YMCA has set up kindergartens and primary schools serving 1,756 children, and secondary schools serving 1,639 teenagers. The education offered by the YMCA focuses on fostering students' talent and STEAM knowledge. For adults and the elderly, the YMCA also delivers various services to meet their needs. For example, volunteer hairdressing training is offered to people above 40 years old, and the trained volunteers have been giving free hairdressing services. Having watched this video, I hope that you now understand more about ESG. Thank you for watching. Looking forward to seeing you in another video.